What's up, YouTube? So before we get started with this video, on first take, they're going to be talking about how brutal the NFL is, which is most likely why Andrew Luck retired. So let's see what they have to say about that.
Cam Chancellor, gone. Calvin Johnson, the transcendent talent. He's going to be the best wideout ever, they were saying when he was in college. He had a chance to be the best ever. Andre Johnson gave him, he was still the best for a while, and Calvin finally takes it. And now Calvin Johnson's on top of the world, and gone. Like, these players are retiring when you don't see it coming, and they're doing it, at least it seems to me, much more often than they used to.
So I think part of it has to do with safety and awareness. We know more about the safety of players, especially with concussions and CTE and memory loss and things of that nature. And a lot of players want to retire before you get to that point. And a lot of players today see the past generation of players that are in their 40s and 50s, and they're just completely falling apart. And they also see that the NFL is not paying out their insurance to help these guys with these brain injuries and CTE and things of that nature. So they figure, if you made enough money, it's not worth to continue playing and being paid for the rest of your life when you can just tap out. So I don't know. Let's continue.
There's a lot of players in the league throughout the history of the league that retire early. I just think that what happens now, because the money is so big, you're seeing a little bit more of the star players retiring that have accomplished a lot in their careers. When I left the league in my 11th year, I didn't go in my 12th year, but I had accomplished so much. So it's kind of like you get bored. It had nothing to do with injury. I got tired of being in the same room with young guys, hearing the same message from coaches. Some guys retire because of injury. Some guys retire because they're tired. They've been playing a long time. They want to spend time with their family. In Luck's case, he's been beat up the last 5 years. The offensive line was just terrible up until a year ago. He looks at the situation. He comes out in the spring, then he gets there in the summer. He's hurt again. And now I don't know what the doctors have told him. Maybe the doctor said to him, it's going to take you to the middle of the season to come back. Mm-hmm. And he said to himself and his wife and his family and everybody, I don't want to sit around and rehab with this team in this facility for the whole year, not playing, being a distraction, because anything goes wrong, everybody going to say, we wish I had Andrew Luck back. It's better to step away rather than go on IR. Now, do I think Andrew Luck is done for good in football? No. Andrew Luck's not done. Think about quarterbacks. They always go back. Head coaches, I'm retiring, I'm done, I want to go do TV. Mm-hmm. As soon as they get that phone call, they come running back. I believe that about Gronk as well. Once their bodies heal up and they feel good, if you think he said recovery, Gronk kept saying recovery. I need to recover. I need my body to heal. He's not saying that I don't want to play football
Gronk
ever
sounds
again.
like he might come back.
Gronk is for sure going to come back, and Andrew Luck is too. Maybe not this year. Think about.
So I definitely agree with Keyshawn Johnson about Andrew Luck being beat up these past couple of years. And, he just had zero offensive line. You got to give that man some protection. And you can really look at the Colts organization for, you have a number one quarterback, but you have a trash offensive line. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, it's counterproductive. A number one quarterback, but your O-line can't protect him. He's getting beat up. It just doesn't make sense. It's like no wonder he's retiring right now because he's been beat up. You guys haven't been able to take care of him. He's made enough money. It's not worth to continue to get beat up, even though this year they've made some changes and they've gotten better. But, with the injuries he already has now, and they might be progressive and they might only get worse and not better. And he just had a kid, so he probably wants to sit around and play with this kid and not be in pain all the time. So he's like, I'm just going to tap out. So I don't know. Let's continue.
If Jacoby Brissett struggles, which I'm hoping he doesn't, then all of a sudden they got to go get a quarterback. Who you think they want to go get? They don't want Justin Herbert. They want Andrew Luck. They're going to pick up that phone and start asking him how he feels. Do you want to play again? Are you sure?
The only part I disagree with you about that is I don't think they're going to wait. I think they're going to stay in touch with him.
Well, yeah, that may be true.
How you doing? Every weekend. What's going on? Well, come on by. Have a drink. Let's go out to dinner. They're going to keep in touch with him.
And it just depends on how Jacoby plays, though. If Jacoby takes them to the playoffs and plays like I think he's capable of playing, then it's a different conversation. If all of a sudden he's bad, that phone's going to ring.
My answer to this question is that it's the exception. And I'm sitting in front of a person that I believe to be the exception. For those that may not know, Keyshawn and I go back many, many years. He's owned his restaurant in L.A. and all of that other stuff when I first met him.
They come in with tennis shoes on, man.
That's right. I came in with tennis shoes. He checked me on that immediately. Let me in. But next time I had to have on some shoes, no doubt about it.
Keyshawn Johnson seemed pretty serious about that. And you know what? I bet you Keyshawn Johnson did put Stephen A. Smith on blast about his tennis shoes coming into a spot like that. Because I bet you back in the day, Stephen A. Smith isn't or wasn't the Stephen A. Smith that he is today. And back in the day when that probably would have happened, Keyshawn Johnson was a lot more bigger and a more a recognizable figure than he is today. So I bet you Keyshawn Johnson probably did put Stephen A. Smith on blast because he looked pretty serious about that. But let's continue.
And we've been cool ever since. Here's the deal. You've always been a businessman, and you've always had your eyes towards the future. You with your man Jerome Stanley and others, I mean, you just know what you're doing. When I look at these players, a lot of them learn what you knew years later. They learn as they've been in the league, as they gather that level of experience and what have you. The reason why I say it's an exception is because the first order of business is to get your money first.
Yes.
And to be in a secure position.
Yes.
You don't get that early. You get that after you put
Unless you drafted high like a Luck.
That's right. And even then, when you young, what are you doing initially? You're spending that money.
Yeah, you want to get to the
instead
second
of investing,
contract.
saving, etc. So you're trying to think about the second contract or whatever.
They don't need the third one as much anymore.
So because of what we say and what we lament about the National Football League in terms of how long it takes you to get your money, what you have to go through to get your money, think about, first of all, for people to even be in a position to make that decision is the exception. You see what I'm saying? It's not everybody that finds themselves in that particular position in a fashion at age 29 to just walk away from the game and having enough money to be secure.
Well,
with
that
yourself.
man made $100 million plus in his
No, I'm not
career.
talking about him.
So
I'm saying
it's easier.
I'm saying it's an exception.
But
That's my point.
but
Everybody ain't in that position.
that's
I think
absolutely
you're both
correct.
actually laying the groundwork to prove that it's the new trend, not an exception. I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
Look, I agree. The media is going to keep that alive anyway. And if he starts to recover physically, why wouldn't he come back? But especially now with the rules with quarterbacks, you can't breathe on the quarterback. The irony is this dude took a beating until he came into an era where finally he has an offensive line and you can't breathe on the quarterback, and then he retired. So in a year or two, he may feel differently. But I think it's a trend for what you guys are saying. Look, in the NBA, they got to tear the uniform off dudes. They keep playing. Major League Baseball, same thing. Why is this happening in the NFL now that they can get their money like by the second contract instead of the third? Because it's brutal.
Yeah, it is brutal. And also, like I said, there's more awareness about safety and what's most likely going to happen to you when you're 40 or 50 about brain injuries and CTE. And guys are tapping out, especially if you have enough money. So, and also, as far as the, actually, let's keep going.
Not the same as those other two sports.
That's, of course.
It's not even close.
That's why I'm saying it's now a trend. As these guys are getting more.
Yeah, I remember what I was going to say. So I don't think it's a trend. I don't think it's a trend at all. And as a matter of fact, it might be going the opposite way because I think a lot of players are looking at Tom Brady and trying to copy his blueprints because Tom Brady's 42 years old right now, 43, and he's just been to the past 3 Super Bowls and won 2 of those Super Bowls. And, you know, he's in uncharted waters right now. For a quarterback to be his age and playing at a super high level. He still has a strong arm. He has no signs of really any injuries. I mean, he's good to go. So I bet you there's a lot of younger quarterbacks that are looking at him and think, you know, I can probably play as long as Tom Brady, as long as I take care of my body, I have a good offensive line, I could maybe make it to there, and that gives you more opportunities to get rings. So I don't necessarily think it's a trend of guys retiring early, like what Max might be saying. It might be because, you know, like I said, there's more awareness, and if you have some injuries, they're probably going to be progressive, and it might get worse over time, so you might want to tap out. But I think it's kind of going both ways, and a lot of people are following the Tom Brady blueprints. So let's continue.
Business savvy,
but
as the money's going up, you're going to see earlier retirements.
It's not a trend. It's an exception, much like Stephen A. says, because it's only the superstars, players that's getting all the money.
Sure, a trend among stars.
In the NFL, that's it.
That's right.
You got to be a star to get your money. If you're just a guy on a 53-man, man, you're going to play till your bones fall apart.
But is my memory playing tricks on me, or did stars not used to walk away at this rate at these ages? Even if it's a trend among stars, that's fine.
I think we're
So again, they probably weren't walking away in earlier years because there wasn't as much awareness. Like, we didn't know about concussions the way we do now. We didn't know about CTE. We didn't really know about those things. Even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you got a concussion in a game, you were clear to go back in. But nowadays, if you have a concussion, I think you have to sit out the next game. So there's a lot more awareness today than it was even 10 to 15 years ago that guys would just keep on playing. They weren't really aware of what's going to happen when you turn 40 or 50 years old and you're just going to completely fall apart. And the NFL is not going to take care of your medical bills. So I don't know. Let's continue.
We're talking about a handful of guys. You got to remember, when you talk about Gronkowski, he plays a violent position. He's getting hit, chopped down, the legs. He's a big body. Andrew Luck, bad offensive line, been beat up the last 5 years. Patrick Willis, linebacker.
Doug Baldwin was sitting in your seat a couple weeks ago.
Doug Baldwin had to retire, though. He had they didn't clear him. They didn't clear him medically. It wasn't like he woke up one day and said, "I'm retiring." They cut him because of his medical condition. Mm-hmm. He may be able to come back, but then nobody's going to clear him. So it's a little bit different. I think every single player that we're talking about is an exception too. That's just what it is.
I just think there are going to be more and more exceptions. So at a certain point, you say, boy, there used to be this many exceptions.
You know what I take away?
Now, Max is making it seem like players are just going to start dropping like flies. No, there's a lot of guys that aren't making a lot of money, like what Keyshawn Johnson said, and you're going to play as long as you can to get as much money as you can. Even if it's $1 or $2 million a year, you're definitely going to have to push and get as much money as you can because it's going to be a long life afterwards, especially if you have injuries like CTE, brain injuries, concussions, your knees are blowing out, you have a bad back, or just a myriad of different things. You're definitely going to need to take care of yourself and play out that contract. So let's continue.
From this conversation,
Tom Brady's still playing because he's not beat up.
The only reason I want to say that, the only thing I want to say to you is this. Back in the day that you brought up, you had guys that were willing to walk away because it wasn't worth it because the money wasn't there.
Exactly.